at that time, everything from sort of my upbringing and my experience in education, I sort of had it in my head pretty firmly that if you're smart and intelligent and into science, then you've got to do your PhD. If you don't do your PhD, then you can't possibly be intelligent. At one point, I dislocated my collarbone and wasn't allowed to drive for a month on my solo road trip. So I met this guy fresh out of Belgium, decided he was fine, he wouldn't be creepy, so let him drive, and we became friends. We kind of adopted each other as brother and sister, became a long-term friend, as you do, just normal things. Yeah. People doing the reptile show, they were all dressed in their khakis and they're being quite serious. And I noticed while I was painting, watching them, I noticed every time they offered the kids to touch a snake, the kids didn't want to. The kids were scared. So eventually I came up, I was like, could I bum a snake off you? So I took a big carpet python and then continued the party face painting. And I wouldn't make a big deal of it, but at the end of every face paint, I'd be like, oh, do you want to pat the snake? And every kid patted the snake. So what I like to say is nobody is truly scared of snakes. They are scared of the idea of snakes. WA Oceans Institute, I believe they're called. UWA.
WA Oceans Institute. And how did you get in to be able to be paid to play with sea snakes and dugongs? Welcome to Working with Wildlife, where I, your host, Jaden Lunt, speak to experts and enthusiasts in different fields of nature to find out how and why they do what they do. And in this conversation, we're going to be hearing from fauna consultant and business owner, Amy Wild, where she has been able to combine her love of art and wildlife and now owns a small travelling reptile demonstration business, where she goes around in her home range of Western Australia, teaching those both young and old about the beauty of Australian wildlife. In this conversation, we're going to be hearing about some of the decisions she's made and some of the actions she's taken that has allowed her to turn her passion into a business. Please welcome to the show, Amy Wild. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day to come up and have a conversation with myself on the podcast. I'm very excited to hear more of your story. We've spoken a little bit already, but you've got a pretty interesting business model that I don't see a lot of. You've got someone around your neck right now. I guess we'll first introduce the visual viewers to who's around your neck. The
important one, yeah. This is Honey, the Woma python. She's called Honey for two reasons. Number one, because her colours remind me of honey, and also because she's sweet like honey. So she's a real sweetie.
And
now, sweet as honey, sweetest little snake.
You've got a demonstration company, a wildlife reptile demonstration company, which you go to schools and fairs and teach people about wildlife. We'll get into that, but I'm assuming Honey is part of this traveling show.
She absolutely is, yes. One of my many stars of the show.
Then how long have you had Honey for?
Oh, good question. So she's actually my second newest reptile. So I've probably had her for about a year and a half. Yeah, so
okay.
Pretty new in my mind.
Okay, a new snake. Now, how do you have a large collection of reptiles that you work with?
Yes and no. As far as reptile collections go, it's pretty small, to be honest. I try not to overburden myself so I can keep the care high quality, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I've got just enough.
I've heard you say before that you don't really see yourself as much as of a reptile keeper. More of you have them for the necessity of showing their value to the public. Is that that's still the case?
Yeah. I think to somebody who's not into reptiles, I've got so many, but relative to like a reptile hobbyist, things I've seen, I've got practically no snakes. So everything's relative.
What is the biggest collection of reptiles outside of zoos? So we'll say private collections. What's the biggest private collection that you're aware of, reptile-wise?
Oh, I can think of a couple of people, who have basically filled their entire homes and then have granny flats also full of reptiles. So,
really? And that's just for private collection interests? Yeah,
just for fun. And I'm always like, guys, you should open this up to the public. People would go crazy. But then it's like licensing and insurance, and they're like, too hard. So
yes, licensing, insurance. Another part of business that I would like to get into further in the conversation. Amy, you're not just interested in reptiles, you also have a couple other interests. First off,
One or two.
Yes, what are some of these interests outside of reptiles that you have?
Numerous. So animals, funnily enough. So love dogs. I've got another small business in dog walking and dog training. I love horses. Don't own any. I have friends with horses. I ride them.
Yes.
And a little dabbling in horse training too, which is fun. Love my indoor rock climbing. Love my kayaking. Love my free diving. That's a big one. I've got a big passion for the ocean.
Okay.
So mad into my free diving when I can. And art is the other one as well. Probably the big hobby of mine.
Indeed, which is tied in a little bit to your business as well with art and being face painting is a very artistic thing. I struggle to draw. I will be the first to admit I have not a natural skill, or in fact, I might be even unnaturally bad. But I do try, and I do enjoy it still. But face painting, you really have to have, and that's another skill. You said that you're into free diving. First, also, what's the name of your dog walking business? This dog business.
The dog business is called Happy Dogs Walks and Training. So I do like private one-on-one training, and I walk dogs that live around me.
Okay. And you said you're into free diving. Free diving, that's actually pretty cool.
Not competitive, I think, like basically just really deep snorkeling is my interpretation. I don't like compete. But
that's still pretty amazing. I struggle with cold water personally. And so when I get into the ocean, often it's cold, or into creek system, it's cold. Do you have any practices that you go through even before you go diving, or to increase your lung capacity? Because to free dive, you have no air tank, right? So is there anything like that you go through?
So far, the best thing I've done was just straight up do a free diving course. That was really handy, because before then I did used to do a tiny bit of hyperventilation. I'd allow three to four breaths of hyperventilation, and the course taught me better ways. So now it's all about completely emptying every airway of oxygen and then doing a big breath. So through your belly, lungs, throat, and your mouth. You inhale through all of it. One big breath out, one big breath in. That was safety-wise a lot wiser. And
And was that,
like
probably the most impactful bit of information that helped you out with your increased lung capacity?
Yeah, probably. I should be doing diaphragm stretches and training and stuff, but I'm not quite committed enough to do that. We'll see how we go.
Yeah, but it's something you really enjoy. You've got a passion for the ocean. So, passion for the ocean. Have you worked much with wildlife in the ocean, or oceanic sea creatures?
Ocean, not heaps. I was a research assistant for the Oceans Marine Institute for WA for a bit. So that was pretty cool. I did one really, really fun field trip, basically scuba diving. It was for a seagrass study, but I got to play with sea snakes and dugongs, so it was pretty great.
Oh, yeah.
And, getting paid. So, that was probably the highlight. I wasn't there for that long because they ran out of funding, but that was a pretty cool experience. Yeah.
Okay, so that was the Western Australia Marine Biology Studies?
WA Oceans Institute, I believe they're called. WA
Oceans Institute. How did you get in to be able to be paid to play with sea snakes and dugongs?
Funny story. So I think I told you before, back then I was also a wildlife tour guide at Krakamaya Sanctuary. That's run by AWC, Australian Wildlife Conservancy.
Right, yes.
So that was really cool. Yeah, that was leading nocturnal tours in a enclosed sanctuary where they've reintroduced a bunch of locally extinct mammals. So I'd take groups out looking for these mammals. And one day I think it was a university group, and the professor was there, and I got talking to him, and he ran the WA Oceans Institute, and basically during this walk he was like, I do want a job. You want to get paid to go scuba diving? I was like, yes, I do. And that's how I got the job.
Stop. That's amazing. So you just start up a conversation. He was looking for someone, and you were like, that's the guy. Was there something that you said that you know of that made him think that you were someone that would be a benefit to what he was looking for?
Honestly, it was so long ago, I cannot clearly remember. I imagine
yeah.
he would have said what he did, and I would have said how much I love scuba diving, and I'd assume
She's like,
one thing would
that's
have led to another
obviously the
from
kind
there.
of person that I'm looking for, someone who loves
Yeah.
scuba diving. Okay, so you love scuba diving, love the ocean. That's how you got into it. You also mentioned that you're also a tour guide. So you're in a sanctuary that at night time it was an enclosed sanctuary, like
Very, very large, enclosed,
very
like
large,
hundreds of hectares sort of deal. So you feel like you're just out in the bush, but there is a feral-proof fence around the outside to prevent cats and foxes from entering.
When I heard enclosed, I was thinking massive shed. And I was like, that's a really big shed.
Much less enclosed. Much less enclosed than that.
Okay, like an in-between enclosed level. All right. And how long were you working there for? And how did you get into that job?
Oh, I did that casually for many, many years, but that was a sort of once a week, once a fortnight tour sort of deal. So that was just one of my many side jobs for a long time. I think I got that through, I think the caretaker at the time was friends with my dad. So I think there must have somebody mentioned to someone that I was keen to get into that.
Yeah.
So I think that was my first tour guiding job that I did.
Okay, wow. And there was a connection through your dad then, that someone, potentially.
I believe so.
Potentially,
yeah.
that's how you got the job.
Went through the interview process and everything, but I think that's
what
initiated
you're obviously
it.
the best pick for the job. Amy, what jobs have you had within the wildlife industry? What ones can you name for us? Tell us.
All right. So probably the biggest one that I started with was from my honours project. So I did biology at uni, then I got into my honours. For my honours project, I got into fauna consulting, which I think you're a little bit familiar with. So basically high level, high detail vertebrate fauna surveys up in the Pilbara predominantly, so north of Australia.
Amazing place.
I love that.
Wow.
I did that for, that's probably, the most prominent early job that I had. I did that for quite a few years. It's hard on the body, but it was so good. Like I learned so much, really cut my teeth, got heaps of experience. And it was during that work that I really narrowed my focus from all of the wildlife to reptiles, because don't know if you're aware, but Pilbara has amazing reptiles. I was working with herpetologists. I got into the photography and the taxonomy, and I was hooked.
All in the consultancy experience.
Yeah. So that was major. Like I said, I did a little bit of that. What's it called? Research assistant work for Oceans Institute. I was wildlife tour guide at Krakamaya. I was actually that's not wildlife related. Won't tell you about that. I was a lab demonstrator for a little bit, so I was running like wildlife labs at the university after I graduated. But that was really cool, great experience. But ultimately, I was way too much doing the fauna surveys, so I had to let that one go.
Right.
This is all way back like 2010 to 2012 sort of thing, long ago.
Okay.
Yeah, and then as the years progressed, I did a couple of other tour guiding jobs. I was an ocean kayak tour guide for a while, which was really cool.
Really?
So,
an ocean kayak tour guide? Was that connected to
cool.
your enclosed, not enclosed tour guide job as well?
Totally different. That was actually a new business started by a guy I'd done a lot of field work with, and he also got me helping with some studies on crocodiles and all sorts of stuff. Rachira Samawira, shout out. So I was their tour guide. So I learned how to read the currents and pack kayaks and how to teach people to kayak. And that was down in Rockingham doing, penguin and seal island tours. So that was really cool.
Whoa. Okay.
That was a big year that year.
Okay. What year was that? 2020?
Oh, good question. If I had probably around... around 2018, 2019, I think that was.
Okay. Yep. All right, then after 2019, where are you looking?
So I was doing lots of face painting back then as a casual job, and then...
For your own business?
No, that was a casual job. Yep, so I was working for someone else for like 8 years throughout that time.
Wow.
Yeah,
Face paint over 8 years. Okay. Well experienced.
A little bit.
Probably one of the most experienced face painters I've ever met.
How many face painters have you imagined?
3, maybe. That's
Oh,
pushing it.
like-
I remember. It's like I came second place out of how many people? 2
Two.
people. Like, that means you came last, dude.
I'll still take it. I'll still take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So 8 years.
Yes. So yeah, long story short, I dabbled. I had a lot of side jobs for a long time. The fauna surveys transitioned to more fauna spotting work as I started my own businesses and needed to be home more. That way I could sort of go home at night. Yeah, those are probably the main ones. Yeah, those are probably the main ones. Oh, I was also a Segway tour guide, for a good 3 or 4 years. That was fun.
Yes. Wow. I gotta say,
Segway,
that is a lot of jobs. And that's maybe a good segue to a question of what is probably your favorite wildlife job that you've had thus far.
Ooh, well, if you count my captive reptiles as wildlife, running my own business kind of takes the cake, if I'm honest. But lots of them I love for different reasons. Like I love tour guiding because it's sort of the reason I love my business. It's imparting your passion for wildlife and fascination and everything there is to enjoy in the wild world, and you get to sort of impart that on groups of people. So that was always extremely rewarding. And the fauna consulting was just awesome because as physically tough as it is, what better way, spending 12-hour days to, 2 weeks straight going out looking for wildlife, so good.
It sounds like a dream potentially to some people. Could you break open a little bit of what it like fauna consultancy is? Like, personally for myself, I heard about fauna being a fauna spotter catcher. It's one of the jobs I have now. I heard about that when I was on the train when I was 16, and I thought that was brilliant. I was like, whoa, you get to go out and catch wildlife for money? That sounds like something I want to do. I didn't actually completely understand everything else that went into it. So there's fauna spotter catcher work and there's fauna consultancy work, which is similar, but there's some differences there, I believe. So could you open that up a little bit for us?
Yeah, so to my mind, fauna consulting is sort of the biggest umbrella term. So I think fauna spotting can still fall under fauna consulting. Yep. Fauna just means animals, to break it down, and most people know what a consultant is, right? It's just a means of being employed at the end of the day.
Yes.
So it's typically vertebrate fauna is what I'm referring to, so animals with backbones.
Yes, good.
And specifically terrestrial fauna, but people do fauna consulting in all areas of environment. Yeah, so the fauna surveys is just another sort of subgroup under the big umbrella term consulting.
Yes.
Yeah, and what I was doing in the Pilbara mostly was, they call them now level 1 surveys, so pretty detailed, lots of pit traps. Basically, when there's a proposed area to clear, we've got to check, number 1, that there's nothing endangered, and number 2, particularly when it's a low surveyed area, we want to find out what species there are. So what kind of reptiles are there? What's the species diversity? Is there anything restricted? Yeah.
And could you tell me what is like one of the most interesting things you've seen out in the Pilbara, wildlife or otherwise?
Oh, good question. Pilbara olive pythons are always pretty damn interesting.
Yeah,
I remember once.
Yeah,
I remember once we were technically on an invertebrate trip, so we're looking for short-range endemics, and we stumbled across an olive python, and a couple of us were predominantly vertebrate people, and I remember we both got told off for playing with the olive pythons. Like, we're doing an invertebrate survey. This is not about reptiles. Leave it alone. But it's a Pilbara olive. You don't understand. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, leave it alone anyway. Okay, so the Pilbara olive python was probably the most unique. Yeah, wow. Was it a big fella,
they're
little
always
fella?
Cool. Big fella. Yeah, Pilbara olives are known for being humongous. They've been recorded at over 6 meters long, right? So they're the really, really big.
I actually didn't
big
actually know that.
Yeah, and they're classified as vulnerable to extinction, so they're also, special. So they're relevant as well as being really big and really cool. Yeah.
Wow, over 6 meters. because, I mean, from what I recall back in my old demonstrating days when I was a young lad and following the law, from my understanding, the largest species of python in Australia was the scrub python. Second was the Owen Pelly, and then third was the olive python. Is that correct, or am I incorrect?
I believe the second is the olive python.
Okay.
Yeah, last I checked, anyway, in the literature, I think it's considered the scrub python is the biggest, and the olive python the second biggest in Australia, as far as I know, and specifically the Pilbara subspecies.
Wow, and then potentially the Owen Pelly would then fall under that. Over 6 meters. That's amazing.
It's really big.
That's wow. The biggest one I've dealt with was probably. My mind's just kind of like just amazed. I knew they got big, but I think I forgot how big they got. The biggest one for me dealt with was 3 meters long, and I like that. That's still was really a thick big snake. That was a thick snake. But I'm imagining that just bigger would be absolutely an amazing animal to find. And let alone handle and just that muscle. Anyway. I wish I could say I found I wish I could say I found a 6 meter one. I didn't. The ones I found were not that big, but they have been recorded at that size. Put it that way. Ones you found were still big. One of my favorite species, or my favorite species of python in Australia is the olive python. And so I think I just got a little fan excited there. Surprising. Sorry, everyone. So you've got a wildlife demonstration company. You said you've kind of walked us through your jobs. What have you done? What's this business going on? Could you explain? I'm a completely new person, never met you before. You say, "Hey, I run a business." How would you go from there?
Yeah, so I think the best way to summarize it is I do reptile shows with a twist. Couple of twists. One is that I'm really flexible. I do all sorts of events. So I do heaps of birthday parties, which are very interactive, like shows, very, very educational. I'm very, as much education as I can reasonably squeeze in there, I'm on it.
So education is a big deal to you.
It's a big, big one for me, really big. Obviously birthday parties, it's kooky and fun, which fits in with my personality just fine. But
checks out.
But obviously I also do like shows for educated adults and universities and schools. So really I tailor to all audiences, and I also do quite a few festivals as well. That's more of a standing display, and people come. I'll set up a photo booth. So there's a big like rainforest, and people can hold a snake in front of the rainforest. I've got a good camera set up, so I take sort of press-style photos. And then,
nice.
As you've heard, I'm also a face painter and balloon twister, so I offer those services as well. I can, whether it's for a birthday party or a festival, I can literally have a big reptile display, do a reptile talk or show, then do face painting for whatever amount of time, then do balloon twisting. I can do reptile-themed party games. I've basically adapted some of the classics, like instead of Pass the Parcel, it's Give the Gecko. Instead of Musical Bobs, it's the Bobtail Bop. So it's like it's games that kids know how to play, but I put an ecological reptile theme to it. Yeah.
Okay. Is this business idea always been something you've always thought of, or is this kind of been a new idea?
It definitely evolved over time. As I guess I got to know myself is probably as I dabbled in, as you know, many myriad different jobs, and also started a PhD at one point. Didn't complete it, thankfully, in retrospect. I sort of realized I love science, but I can't sit at a desk all day. I love research, I love science, but I'm not a sit down and stare at a computer screen all day kind of person. I need to be moving, I need to have new environments, I need variety in my life. So really I need a job that offers that. And my brain is a big dichotomy of both art and science, and I love to entertain and to educate. So eventually I figured out why not create my own job that fits what I want to do.
Fits both. Had you seen any other businesses like yours before?
Yeah, a couple. I definitely got the idea to start doing reptile shows through a guy called Mitch Ladyman, who's pretty great. Yeah, he took a big part in sort of fledging my initial idea. So I did reptile shows and venomous snake relocation courses through his business, for his business. And that was really great. He also helped me out with my YouTube channel and stuff. And that
cool.
really doing it, so doing that through his business is really what sparked the idea for me. Another big moment for me was one day I was face painting at a big birthday party, and they happened to have a wildlife show going on nearby.
At the birthday party?
Yeah. So I was the face painter
party,
in the
yeah,
corner.
right.
Yeah. Oh, you see some crackers. So I was the face painter in the corner. I was dressed like a rainbow fairy. I looked ridiculous. And then the people doing the reptile show, they were all dressed in their khakis and they're being quite serious. And I noticed while I was painting, watching them, I noticed every time they offered the kids to touch a snake, the kids didn't want to. The kids were scared. So eventually I came up, I was like, could I bum a snake off you? So I took a big carpet python and then continued the party face painting. And I wouldn't make a big deal of it, but at the end of every face paint, I'd be like, oh, do you want to pat the snake? And every kid patted the snake.
Really?
And that was a real big light bulb moment for me.
Yes.
Blending that line, right? You don't have to be a big official person with a beard and a hat and car keys.
Yes.
That's all important in order to do this, right? And if you're a bit more approachable and bright and colourful and fun, hey, honey, she wants to steal the show. That can really help kids sort of get on board with it. So that was a big moment for me as well.
So it was you up until that point, had you had the idea of starting your own reptile business?
No, I've never been a particularly long-term planner. I've always sort of been take opportunities as they come, see what you like, generate ideas as you go. If something might be a good idea, give it a shot. But at the same time, obviously, I've never been one to go, okay, I'm going to spend all my money, I'm going to quit all my jobs, and I'm going to go hard. I also have never done that. I took the safe approach, offer this as a service, see if it takes off, see where it goes. And went pretty well for me in the end.
And it's taking off, would you say?
Yeah, the reptile business is doing really, really well, which is awesome. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And how long ago did you start the business?
Good question. I think it was 2016 or 2017 when I started as my own reptile business.
Eight or 9 years.
Yeah, about that.
And did you start off as doing a reptile show and balloon twister? Was that combination at the inception? Okay.
No, that was actually over COVID that I transitioned. So for many years, the face painting and balloon twisting was just a separate side gig. I was working only for one person casually, and that was totally separate to my reptile shows. Yeah, about that. And then over COVID, actually, because obviously there was a big period where all of the entertainment work died. So I used that extra time basically to set up my own business as a face painter balloon twister.
That's so
Hi,
cool.
honey.
And
what are you doing?
You're really coming through. I loved when I was demonstrating, and I would have we had some Woma pythons as well. Fantastic snakes. They just sat there. They'd curl around your neck. It'd be a cold night, and they'd be just wrapped around there, having a conversation with someone they have no idea the snake's there, and then all of a sudden be like, oh hey, by the way, did you realize what do you think about the snake? And they would just freak out, but it just sat so nice. Yeah, and they can be really some great animals. One of my worst bites is also from a Woma, but usually they've been pretty good for me. So with this business, Amy, what was the creation of the business like? So people they like working with wildlife. Working with wildlife is the name of the podcast. How and why do people do what they do? With your creation of this business, why did you want to create a business? Why did you want to create something for yourself, or why not just work for someone else? And why did you ultimately decide to do the business that you're in presently?
To be honest, I just kind of wanted to, which sounds weird. I've never wanted to be a massive business. I don't want to employ other people. I don't want to be huge. I'm not ambitious in that sense. I just want to, represent myself, I guess, and do things the way I want to do. That sounds a bit arrogant, but I guess I've got so much
Understandable.
random experience from like different worlds. I think I couldn't see that blend of two different worlds, if that makes sense, existing in any pre-existing job. And I can be a little bit unique. So I thought, why not capitalize on that and at least give it a go? You know, that's always been my thing. It might not work. That's okay.
Yeah.
Give it a go. Give it a red hot crack. See what happens and let the feedback dictate where you go from there. But yeah.
Was for when you were in this past 7 years, 8 years that you've had this business, has there been any doubt that it's working or that you wanted to just quit and move on to something else?
I've never thought of quitting. No, that's never even occurred to me, to be honest, with this business. It's grown very organically, so it did start small. I started, you know, at the beginning, I remember it was very exciting, my first ever reptile job, you know, reptile show for myself, you know, I was so nervous and excited. And at first it was maybe only one a fortnight or even less than that probably. And it just gradually got busier and busier and busier. I'm lucky that, like I said, I didn't do the all or nothing thing. I kept working on my side jobs. In a sense, the downside to that was that I was often very busy with said side jobs, so I didn't necessarily put as much initial work into the business as I could have, so it started slowly. But it's paid off in the end. Yeah.
And
sorry, what's
so
the
you
question?
feel
Did
like
I
that
answer
was
the
the best
question?
decision? Yeah, you did. Was that so? That was the best decision. Do you wish you had committed, or you're confident and comfortable with the decision you made to take it slowly and let it grow organically?
I'm glad I did what I did. Yeah. Maybe I should have worked later nights or put more work in initially. If I had, maybe it would have taken off faster. But at the end of the day, statistically as well, I recently read a couple of studies. Apparently businesses are much more likely to succeed if you do it the way I did. That's a complete coincidence. I had no idea that was a thing when I started. I just didn't want to risk. I didn't want to risk losing income. I didn't want to, you know, have it fail and then be in trouble. So I took the safe route in that respect. But turns out statistically, the most businesses succeed when you do it exactly that way. And there's a much higher failure rate when you just, quit everything, spend all your assets on a big takeoff, and then, you know, it can flop if it doesn't immediately take off.
Yeah, well, what it sounds like is that you've used the word yourself anyway. It's grown rather organically. You haven't really doubted your abilities. You felt pretty confident to the whole way. You didn't want to quit ever. There was that you didn't start off with that all or nothing. It was that organic growth.
Don't get me wrong. The first few reptile shows, I was so nervous and I did so much preparation and I was so worried it wouldn't go well. Like, I don't want to say I always knew I'd be awesome. Like, it was so scary to begin. Don't get me wrong. But I've never regretted it.
You've never regretted it. So it was tough initially, but that was more so just the nerves, but you still kept going. I think that's pretty something. I think that's pretty cool. To have that kind of confidence in yourself or in your own business, and that it's worked out so well. Why do you think that your business has been so successful and continues to be successful?
Honestly, it's hard to say because I don't do all the services I should, surveys, that I probably technically should if I was a proper business person. But in my mind, I think a big thing is the point of difference. I think people like that. Like I said, I'm not trying to be this big, serious, khaki-clad expert professional talking down to all the children. You know, I'm sort of one of you. I want to get you involved. I'm excited. I'm a kooky. And also the point of difference, right? They say with businesses, having a point of difference is big. And as far as I know, at least in Perth, USP? I'm the only one who does. Oh, is that what it's called?
Unique selling point, USP.
Oh, there you go. That's a good jargon. I'll put that away.
So I think
I'm the only one who does reptiles and face painting and balloon twisting. So it's I'm really party friendly, especially. And
yes. Now, if you could remind me, you said that you've seen this kind of combination done elsewhere. Is that also in Western Australia? Because you're coming from Western Australia as well today. Is this happening over just in Western Australia? Did you see this in overseas, in other parts of Australia? Where else have you seen this method?
Sorry, which method? I lost you.
Combining the reptiles with face painting and balloon twisting.
That specific thing, I haven't seen that anywhere. As far as I know, I'm the only person who does it. I just meant in terms of general business principles, it's good to be unique, right? As long as there's an actual market for it, standing out, being different and unique. So that's what I've got. As far as I'm aware, there's no one else who does reptile shows and everything else.
Yes, humble wording. It was before I thought I misheard you when you were describing two businesses then. I thought they were combined. So it's been you're presently, as far as you're aware, only one that's doing it. Okay, so that's pretty something. I mean, that would explain why I have never heard or met someone who combines the two.
Yeah.
Amy, because this is a new thing, what challenges do you face that if you had these two kind of face painting, balloon twisting, and reptile demonstrating, if you had those two separate, what with combining it, what difficulties do you have to kind of work around?
I mean, one of the first general things as a sole trader is just being a good business person. That's a memo that I never sort of got when I started a business. It's, you have to be your own social media person. You've got to be your own marketing person. You've got to be your own accountant. Well, you get an accountant, but, you've got to do your own invoicing and keep your books, as well as actually providing the service. That was something that was, quite tricky. I'm not a natural business person, put it that way. So I learned a lot of skills, maybe a little bit belatedly, but we get there.
You learned them eventually, yes.
Yeah. And probably the other one, and I'm not sure, but I have a strong sense, if that makes sense, that it's hard for people to imagine that I genuinely know my stuff about reptiles, and I'm also a genuinely good face painter and balloon twister. And general party entertainer, right? Because I think typically, as we've said, those are not things that go together. So I think just working out and also not being great at sort of selling myself generally, I think that's something that is a potential struggle is, to sort of convey that I do know my stuff with reptiles. I, worked with the wild ones for a very long time, and I'm also pretty good, not to brag, but, I'm not a terrible face painter or balloon twister either.
You do pretty good. And you're pretty good because you're also into artwork, and you've been drawing for a lot of your life, or at least creating art for a lot of your life. And was this something that you were into as a young lass,
always
quite young?
Yeah, basically my childhood, if I was outside, I was either climbing trees or catching lizards or looking at birds. If I was indoors, I was drawing. That was sort of the bulk of my childhood.
Okay, and why was that? I guess maybe we can. I'd like to continue with the business stuff still, but you said that was a lot part of your childhood was a lot outdoors painting and drawing. Why were you outdoors so much? Was it something that you did with your family?
Yeah, honey, what are you doing? So my mum has always been big into the beach and sort of coastal stuff. So I remember multiple times as a small kid, my mum, Amy, get out of the water. You've been in there for 3 hours. And I'm like, what do you mean? I just got in. So that was
you do love
that.
The water.
And I do. And my dad was also a tour guide for quite a time. He was also a native garden landscaper. So his clients were typically people that lived on big bush blocks. So I'd be the kid, I'd be off on the bush tour guide, but I'd be off by myself doing my own thing, and he'd do his big whistle, and that was my signal to come back, they were leaving. Or he'd be landscaping, I'd be running off entertaining myself in the bush. And
That's
again,
cool.
Just wait for the whistle to come back. So a lot of time, only child as well. So a lot of time sort of being encouraged to entertain myself, and the bush was my playground and the ocean. And then when you're indoors, you don't have those things. And I don't know, pencil and paper is just what I gravitated to.
No, I think that was pretty well described. So you because you were so young, because you were an only child, you did have to kind of create things for yourself to be entertained. Which I mean, nowadays, I think if kids have that issue, often their response is the phone.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Straight to the screen.
then it goes straight to, they go to the screen. And I'm thinking, and tell me what you think, if you grew up in this modern day with the challenges that young kids face, can you see yourself having a different outcome to where you are now?
To be honest, my instinctive answer is it would depend on the parents, because I think I totally understand. I will say the idea of actually parenting children terrifies me. Like, so hard. Like, entertaining kids, no worries. Love it. Love spending time with kids. But to be responsible for an entire human life, like, oh my gosh, that is so scary. But yeah, I think it will come down to what the parents set the kid up for. Because I also understand parenting is so hard. It's kind of like playing fetch with your dog to exercise them, right? Like, it's not the best thing. You probably shouldn't, but also we don't have enough time, so you just do it. So I understand for parents, that's the kids being a nightmare. I've got 100 things to do, give them a screen. Like, I totally understand that's just the easiest thing. Draw. Yes. Yeah, exactly. There's no parent going, I don't want my kid to go outside. And, it's life happens. But I think if the kid sort of was forced to not have the screen time and is sort of...
good parenting was implemented.
Yeah, just immersed in nature. I think for most people, when nature is your playground, it becomes your playground, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, you're aware of it. Once you're in it, you learn about it, then you realize what's kind of... you're going to get a taste of the adventure that's outdoors and the kids' creative spirit.
Yes, and especially as a kid, you don't have that fear. So I think that's those formative years. That's why it's most important to have all that nature time, because that is when you do learn the nature, the bush, the ocean. It's not some big scary place full of death. It's literally a playground. It's full of joy and wonder and greatness, and and that gets into your brain at a pretty deep level when you're learning it as a child. And I think that's when a lot of that happens.
And would you say, you say parenting has a big part to play? The part that your parents played, were they very encouraging to your drawing and your artistic side, as well as your interest in nature?
Yeah. Encouraging just in that, they always told me it was great. I guess I got art supplies for birthdays and stuff. It wasn't a big deal. I wasn't going to fancy art school or anything. I didn't go to any of that. It was just the thing that I did in my spare time.
What's like one of the earliest memories as a starting point of you with wildlife? What's one of your earliest memories with wildlife, and kind of following that through to now, with the addition of like how old you were when that moment happened?
Tricky.
It's a large timeline. I understand.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And also when I was very young, do you have that thing with false memories? It's like, I know the photos of myself as a kid, so I don't know if I'm inventing a memory based on my memory of the photo, if that makes sense.
Okay, so what I should be asking is, can you tell me of a real memory?
But I can make something up and no one will know anyway, right?
It's so true. It's so true. Okay, the most honest memory that you could potentially have.
Maybe one of pure joy was my nano and granddad had a massive bush block, and it was so good because he had a bunch of old like sheds and art studios that never got touched, and there was regular bush and there was a big granite outcrop and there were bits of tin. So every time I go to Nano and Granddad's place, it was hi Nano and Granddad, hi Nano and Granddad, and off I was. Yeah, exactly. So I'm flipping the tin. But the best thing about that property, he had one particular little shed that was full of barking geckos. And because they're so big.
Stop it.
Yeah, full of them. So as soon as I discovered that, I was a small kid then, but that sticks out in my brain. As soon as I worked that out, every time I went there, I was straight to that one shed to find the barking geckos. That was so damn cool.
Wow. That's so gnarly. What a cool property to be able to grow up in. All right, so how old do you think you might have been then? I
was probably 5 or 6.
Real young,
I imagine. Okay. Yeah, and for years that became the pattern. But
that was just the thing. And then so you kind of wildlife, 5 years old, a shed full of barking geckos. Moving forwards through your life's timeline, what are some stepping stones that were kind of impactful in your wildlife career?
Well, for the ocean element, I think just my mum would take me up to Exmouth and Ningaloo Reef every year through my mid to late childhood and teenage years. And that was huge because, in my opinion, Ningaloo is the best place to snorkel and freedive in Australia, at least. Yeah, Ningaloo.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was huge for that. That massively developed my passion for the ocean. That was just literally we'd set up a little beach tent, and for 2 weeks we'd go out there with a flask of coffee and some lunch. We'd go out, snorkel, come back, have morning tea, go out, snorkel, come back to the little beach tent, have lunch, go out again, snorkel, and that was just all day, every day. We might throw in a bushwalk here and there, but yeah, and that was every year. So that was big for the marine life passion.
And that was like your early teens, that is?
Yeah, probably later childhood and early teens as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Reptiles, probably more from my dad's side. Lots of bush camping. Like, he also worked with farmers a lot, so he'd be like, "Hey mate, can we camp in your bush?" So we just do proper remote bush camping from, again, when I was probably 6 or younger. I just don't remember.
Wow.
And onwards. So that was, big. And what you got to do when you're in the bush, what do? You turn over the rocks and the logs and any bit of tin you find. That's just what you do when you're in the bush. I learned that lesson pretty young.
So neat. So neat. Yeah, and then, again, that's kind of that early to late childhood.
Yes,
That's occurring.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And then you were asking for later, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, what's kind of stepping stones in age, and to get a bit of an idea of the progression of what your careers looked like?
Yeah, so university was the next big one. Making lots of friends who are also into wildlife was pretty great. And then my honours project getting me into fauna consulting was, I think I mentioned, that was my first sort of proper wildlife job, and that really lit.
Oh, people early 20s that you did that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay, awesome.
19. Oh, yeah, probably 21. Yep.
20 years. So 21 years old. Is when you got your first introduction to the professional kind of industry of wildlife, and then from then
20.
You're looking at what you said, like a 5-6 year period that you were doing that consultancy work for.
Probably around then, yeah. Driving around Australia was another huge one that really lit the adventure fuse for me. So,
okay, when did you do that?
A couple of years after getting into fauna consulting. So basically I had this moment of realization. I'd gone primary school, straight into high school, straight into uni, straight into honours, straight into work, and I'd never had a break, right? And suddenly, after doing the fauna consulting, I had a bit of money for the first time ever. So I sort of bought a troopy and just went for it. I just drove around the country by myself, and that was the best thing. One of the best decisions I've ever made. That was really damn cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like such an adventure that's like calling to every young person who loves wildlife to travel around Australia. Yeah. What you said you had a bit of money for the first time in forever. Does for yourself consultancy work paid pretty well?
Yeah. Yep. Heck of a lot more than, serving coffee at Gloria Jean's, put it that way.
Okay. Is there a kind of a rough estimate that you could give, what you'd make per, on a weekly basis for this consultancy kind of gig? Or if someone was looking to join an industry, the consultancy industry, what sort of pay that might they be expecting? You did say that it was on 2-week stints that you did.
Yes.
So you're away from home, so that's a part of it. But what kind of ballpark are we talking about?
So I will say there's a few factors, so it's got to vary a lot. It depends on the company you're working for and the premise you're working for as well. So if you're working full-time, part-time, casual, or contracting, you're going to be looking at different pay rates. And also depends on your knowledge, your expertise, your experience. Is also going to factor in there. And also way back then, that was a long time ago, so pricing has changed. I think back then it was like $200 to $300 a day. So that was amazing money back then. That was so good. But these days, particularly for someone experienced and knowledgeable, it's significantly higher than that, at least if you're consulting. Yeah, or contracting.
Yeah.
Contracting
And
or
then
subcontracting. Yeah.
you said that you got into that through your
Honours project.
uni through your honors
Yes.
project. So how did those two those two connect? So you're in your doing your honor, because the university world I'm not well accustomed to. Did the university have a connection with an organization, and then they kind of linked you up, or did you reach out by yourself? How did that go about?
So actually my dad was helped with that as well, because it was sort of his idea. The project was looking at camera traps, so the passive infrared motion detecting cameras. And the basic premise was to see if, and if so, when and how they could replace potentially pit trapping, which is the primary method used for surveying vertebrate fauna, small terrestrial vertebrate fauna. And way
Very
back
handy
then,
trap.
yeah, and way back then they didn't know much about them at all. They were mostly used in the US for hunting large mammals. So yeah, that was sort of the idea that was hatched.
Right. I thought you were talking about the infrared.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah, camera
right.
traps. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I was thinking Elliott trap, but you said yes, infrared. So
Cameras.
continue.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Camera. Yep. So yeah, they don't affect the animal at all, right? Is the idea. Whereas anything that involves physically trapping an animal is very invasive, can lead to deaths, can lead to stress for the animals.
Yeah.
So that was
Big
the
time.
idea, to see like, can we replace any of these methods with camera traps, and if so, when and how? Would that be
makes sense.
feasible? Yeah, so my dad sort of floated the idea to me, and I was like, yeah, it sounds pretty interesting. I floated the idea to some supervisors at the uni, and they were like, yeah, that's good. And I think it was actually once I had my supervisor confirmed, she knew of a environmental fauna consultancy that did the fauna surveying work, because we needed to actually have pit traps so that we could compare the data to what was recorded by the cameras. So yeah, I got into that. So I basically worked as a volunteer for the first couple of trips in exchange for setting my cameras on their pit traps. And then sort of after my honors project finished, I was like, I loved that work. Can I keep doing this for money? And they said yes, and that's how that started.
They said yes. Wow. Okay, so it was a bit of a volunteering, and then eventually, once you finished it, you obviously did your work. You did good work for them to think that you were worth keeping on. So then that was again early 20. That was when you were about 21 years old. And then you've moved on up, and you've then since been a Segway operator, a kayak tour guide, tour guide doing night tours in a large and enclosed, not fully enclosed environment. And now you're running your own business. Two businesses, sorry, apologies. You're running both your demonstration and party wildlife company, and then what is the name of your company in case anyone wants to reach out and hire you up?
That's Amy Wild Adventures.
Amy Wild Adventures. And can I ask, what brought you to that name?
Again, back in the day, I think I wanted to make a website for my art, I think is when it started. And I was trying to come up with a name for what the website should be, and I had my friend that I'd made his Belgian, quick segue, on that Australia trip. At one point I dislocated my collarbone and I wasn't allowed to drive for a month on my solo road trip. So I met this guy fresh out of Belgium, decided he was fine, he wouldn't be creepy, so let him drive, and we became friends. We kind of adopted each other as brother and sister, became a long-term friend, as you do, just normal things.
Yeah, that's normal. So I get that.
Yeah, so normal. What are you doing, honey? So fast forward a few years, he came to visit me in Perth, and he was helping me set up the website. And he was like, yeah, Amy Griffiths, nobody's going to remember that. That's lame. Amy Wild. You should be called Amy Wild. And at first I thought it was hilarious and everyone teased me about it. And I was like, yeah, it is pretty funny, but it works. It's easy to remember. I go on adventures. That's sort of my shtick. So yeah, Amy Wild Adventures was born from that moment.
Wow. And that Belgian friend of yours had a great idea. It's worked out for you big time. So you're on a month. how did you, where did, I'm just a bit unsure how you meet someone on a road trip by yourself, and then
Couchsurfing.
you're going in the same direction, or he was just
Yeah,
like, you know
so
what, life's boring, I'm gonna go drive this random lady around Australia.
yeah, so it was a couchsurfing.org website
Oh,
made for travelers. So it's sort of
yeah,
made for people in that sort of situation. You know, person X wants person Y to share an adventure for these reasons. Who does that work with? So we were
yeah,
both in
right.
Melbourne. Yeah, I was very lucky. I had family in Melbourne that put me up when I was incapacitated. I was extremely
That's great.
fortunate.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was going to volunteer at a music festival in Brisbane. And that was, well, out of Brisbane, Woodford. You might have heard of it.
Yes.
Given
Yes,
you
I
with the
have. Yes.
Woodford Folk Festival was the one. And I'm like, sure, I can do that. So yeah, we travelled that way and then kept going north after that. Until eventually I could drive, and he wanted to meet a girl in Tasmania. So he hitchhiked from like Cairns all the way to Tasmania, and I kept going on my trip. And it worked out
Wow.
really well. Yeah.
We did work out well for you. Did was that interest of your Belgian friend? Did that end up flourishing into something that's lasted till now?
The romantic relationship did not, but he developed a deep love for Tasmania and has lived there ever since then. So it worked out pretty well for him as well.
Wow, that's a pretty fun story. I've to meet someone and then to couch surf and then drive with a random and make friends in 2021. Were you about that age? You said that
Yeah,
you took
I
around
think
this road
I
trip.
turned 22 on that trip, so I was 21, 22.
Okay. Well,
Between then.
what an adventure to go through.
Yeah.
One of many, might I add, Amy Wild adventures. Uh, for the general idea of your working experience, has there been any moments that you would class as a fork in the road? Have you had many moments in your life that have required a decisive decision and you were challenged either in the moment or you didn't actually think of it much of an issue or a thing, but then later down the track you realised was actually quite something?
The first one that comes to mind is actually quitting my PhD.
Okay, quitting the PhD.
Yeah. So at that time, everything from sort of my upbringing and my experience in education, I sort of had it in my head pretty firmly that if you're smart and intelligent and into science, then you've got to do your PhD. If you don't do your PhD,
Yes.
then you can't possibly be intelligent. So I sort of didn't ask any questions. I did take quite a few years of working after doing my honours, but then it sort of felt inevitable. Yeah, but you got to do your PhD eventually. So I kind of just started that. Because I just felt it was the thing to do without really considering whether it would make me happy or whether it would lead to the sort of career I truly wanted. I didn't really think about those things. I just thought, if you're going to be smart, you got to do a PhD. So I started it. And It was great. Like I'd learned I'd heard a lot of horror stories about terrible supervisors and things going horribly wrong with the research. And honestly, I had none of that. I had the best supervisor ever, Rob Davis, shout out. I had a wonderful project, awesome research topic. It was going to be the effect of urbanization on reptiles. So I was set up actually perfectly. I had no horror stories in that first, I think, 6 months or year that I was doing it. But I had wrapped my back around a fence post coming off a very fast horse and had some pretty intense back pain.
Wow.
Yeah, it was less than ideal. So I was experiencing anytime I was sitting, my pain was going up. So that wasn't super fun. And I also had an issue with my funding, and I was also just learning as the long 8-hour days of just computer work set in, it just made me sad. Even again, when I was set up for success, best possible research topic, everything was great. And I was just like, I sit in traffic for an hour to sit in front of a computer reading journal articles, and it just made me sad.
Riveting.
And ultimately, I know, right? Sorry, that got dark. But that was my genuine experience. And I'm not a quitter. Normally, I do not quit things. And that's one thing that I did quit. And in retrospect,
sitting for 8 hours. Sitting on
and it was
8
very
hours,
much,
that sounds riveting.
I know. I mean, like, again, the research topic really was interesting, but it just did not suit my brain. And I think having that pain, the combination of the intense pain and the loss of funding is what tipped me over the edge to make the decision to quit. And I'm so glad I did, because sort of the more I learned afterwards, that very much would have set me up for a career in research and academia. And like I said, I was really learning through that experience. No, being at a computer for long periods is not good for my brain. That is not what lights.
That's not who you are. It doesn't check out.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't have the issue at uni, I think, because you were constantly switching subjects. You'd go to one lecture for one subject, then you go to a different lecture theatre doing a different subject, and it was always changing. So I never had that problem. It really hit me in that PhD time. And it was also that experience that made me realize, no, I want to be active. I want to be moving. I want to be talking to people, and sort of experiencing what it was like to be deprived of all those things made me realize how much I needed those things in my career, and made me a little focused in the direction I wanted to go. And it was pretty soon after that I came across Mitch and the Reptile Education, and I started the YouTube channel, also called Amy Wild Adventures. And that's when I was really more focused, and I want to be working with the public, doing education, as well as working with wildlife, if that makes sense.
So it was through a bit of a blowout, could be seen as a failing.
Exactly.
You kind of came back in and realized and that what you wanted. So you realized what you didn't want, and that helped clarify what you did want.
Exactly.
Yeah. Why do you think? Can I ask? You said you had it in your mind to be if you're smart, you go to uni, you do the honors. Technical word you used has escaped me, but the idea that you had to go to uni if you were smart. Where do you think that idea came from for yourself?
I think lots of sources, probably my parents, and that was no fault of their own. I think they wanted the best for me. They both went to uni, and I think that was sort of in their mind. Also, when I went to university myself, I was sort of, I guess, getting that message. I'm not exactly sure where. I suspect I just got it, from many different circles. And it's obviously something that I just absorbed. It's one of those, it's one of those ideas that you don't quite realize that you have. You just sort of operate with a premise without...
You just live it, yeah.
Especially when you're young, you're not so self-aware. You're not really analyzing your assumptions. It's just like, this is just how life is. This is what you got to do. I didn't question it until... Yeah. So it's interesting things.
Yeah, kind of fun. Yeah. There's a psychological term... where it's like, well, you believe what you believe, and you assume that everyone else believes what you believe, and and you assume that everyone else sees how you see. That's not the truth. But
big source of misunderstanding in life, isn't it?
Yes, it is, and that's where a lot of conflicts can then arise from that. So that was a big moment for yourself, is what you're saying. And you are happy with the decision now that you've made, running a business. It's pretty successful and it's going really well. Amy, I'd like to get into the questions just in a moment, but I thought, is there something that you would think is important for listeners who want to work with wildlife in the industries that you've experienced? What guiding information would you give them to help maybe mitigate some of the blowout and failings that someone else could experience?
Yeah, really good question. So one that I'm quite passionate about, that I think even to this day, as far as we've come in as a society, something that I just don't think kids hear when considering career prospects is, first find out for yourself, and then strongly consider when considering career options, what lifestyle lights you up. And in terms, like, specifically, do you like to be active with your body? Do you love to move your body? Or is moving your body really stressful or scary? Is your safe space being at a computer, for example? Do you love engaging with people? Do you need to engage with people? Or do you prefer being quiet by yourself? Or do you need both? For me, I'm a both person. I need sometimes to just sort of be a hermit, to be in the bush by myself, but I also need some time to be, with people and educating and engaging with people. I need both, which is not easy, hence creating my job. But that's a really huge one. And again, I learned that the hard way with my PhD, but it would have been a lot easier if I'd sort of considered that beforehand. Oh, actually, I don't want an office job. Okay, scratch all of those things off the list. So, yeah, and understanding your brain as well is, I guess, really what I'm trying to say. Your personality and your brain, your neurotype, really comes into it.
What is a neurotype?
Communication style. Well, if you're neurotypical, then your brain is wired like the majority of people. And then you might have heard of the term neurodiversity, neurospicy.
Only up until recent.
Terms? Okay. So that can really inform career decisions, because that can really impact how your brain works, what lights up your brain, what freaks your brain out, what your brain cannot deal with, or what your brain needs extra help with. So I guess the earlier you can get a good understanding of that, I think the more likely you are to succeed with your early career choices.
Okay. Talking about neurological stuff, there's a book that I'm actually reading at the moment called How to Switch on Your Brain. It's fascinating, and it talks about how you can physically rewire your brain, so your brain actually changes structure through your thoughts. Like certain nodes and DNA is switched off and switched on through the decisions and thoughts that we have.
Neuroplasticity might be what you're talking about.
It is that too. That's like the broad term, but then specifically in what spaces of our lives that can happen. So it's a very interesting book, How to Switch on Your Brain. I think it's by Lauren. I don't think it's by Amy. I think it's because I'm talking to Amy that I think of Amy potentially. But talking about switching on your brain, Amy, are you ready to go through some overrated, underrated questions? That part of the conversation, we're ready to play a bit of a game.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. Love games.
Amazing. So you understand how the game works. It's overrated, underrated. I'm going to give you a statement, and then you respond with overrated or underrated. If you can't decide, just say rated, and that's totally cool. Right? So, number 1, overrated, underrated, the fear of snakes in Australia.
As in the fear of Australians?
Yes, Australians, what their fear of snakes.
Okay, it should be overrated massively. Snakes are just another animal. And yeah, it's kind of heartbreaking when you see people absolutely terrified of snakes. So yes.
And
have
that's one of the things.
Have I understood the rules? Is that right? Yeah.
You have very much understood the rules, and it sounds well. This is also a bit what your business is kind of about, and that's changing the thoughts, it's changing the neuroplasticity of people's brains and their opinions and thoughts on wildlife, specifically reptiles.
What I like to say. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, what I like to say is nobody is truly scared of snakes. They are scared of the idea of snakes. Right.
Yeah, good one.
When you actually understand snakes and you spend time with them, they're just another critter. They are nothing, honestly, to be scared of. But when you've got this big idea of what a snake is, that idea is terrifying, but it doesn't reflect what they actually are. So, yeah.
Amazing. That's a good point. Number 2, Amy, reptile education in schools.
I'd have to say definitely underrated. There should be so much more of it. It's the best thing ever. We need more. All the reptile education in schools. Yep, got to have it.
Absolutely. All principals listening to this, Amy is your last in Western Australia. Number 3.
Clearly I'm unbiased.
Clearly. Number 3, reptiles as emotional support animals.
Gosh, absolutely. Also underrated. There should be more. Yeah.
Underrated. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, I'm doing that right.
Yes, you very, very confidently said underrated. Is there a particular reason why you think so surely that this should be something that's more common?
Well, I've spent a lot of time introducing people to first-time snake experiences, and one comment that I've heard again and again is that they are so relaxing. I mean, when you've got the right animal. They're just so chill. They're that gentle, constant pressure. They're sort of there, but they're not too much in your face. They're They're going to cuddle up to you, but they're not too demanding. I just think they'd be wonderful therapy animals. They're fascinating. They're different. People get so fascinated by these wonderful creatures and how gentle they are and how soft they are and all these unexpected traits that they possess. And they are just straight up calming. And I've heard that from so many people again and again. So yes, I think therapy snakes should be a thing, 100%.
Awesome. This one, I mean, I've got an idea of what you might say, but overrated, underrated snake repellents.
Yeah, massively overrated. They're a scam.
Facts. I created a video probably 2-3 years ago on snake deterring and how to deter snakes from your yard, and I covered this statement. But I still get questions today, even after I said it in the video. People will ask
all the time
how exactly are snakes deterred. Does garlic work? How about salt? No. Okay, well, the final one. They're trying. People are trying. Number 5, the role of reptiles in controlling pest populations.
Underrated. Yeah. I mean, caveat, small pests, small mammals, not so much foxes, for example. But yeah, absolutely for feral rodents. Yeah. Super handy. Super great to have a carpet python in your roof. You won't have any problem with rats if you do.
That is about as confident as I think Australians can get, is with having a carpet python in their roof. I hear I'll get a carpet python in the shed and in the roof. If he stays there, I'm happy. He comes out of there, I'm gone, or he's gone. So that's a common thing that I hear. Well, that's the end of the game. Amy, thank you very much for playing it. I guess before we kind of slither on out of this conversation, is there a final point that you would like to cover about anything that is wildlife related that you think is important to know?
No, I guess the biggest takeaway is the world is your playground, specifically the natural world is your playground, and it's the best source of learning and discovery and interest and connection to nature and just all the good stuff, all the happy stuff. So just get out there, get in nature. If you're scared, do it in a tour or something, but get out there, get wild, and yeah, your brain will reward you for it.
All right, hoorah.
Stay wild.
Stay wild. Amy, thank you for coming on the show.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me on. It was awesome.
Thank you for watching or listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to find more information on today's guest or more information on the podcast, you can find those details in the description below. Otherwise, I hope and look forward to seeing you in the next one.